Hi, this is Josh Kulp. I'm talking to you from the Conservative Yeshiva in Jerusalem. We are learning Daf Kaf Zayin this week of Masechet Avodah Zarah, page 27 of Tractate Avodah Zarah for Daf Shevui. And I'm going to give a little preview during this video of some of the things we're going to be talking about, maybe help place you where we are in the chapter and in the Masechet. So the beginning of the daf continues to discuss the rule that one does not need to rescue certain people from a pit if they're at risk of their life there. And the Amoraim go and give a few excuses that one can give for not having rescued the person. It's a little strange, to be honest with you. If you're not going to rescue a person from a pit, which I think is an awful thing to do, by the way, they're going to die. And so what do you need to give them an excuse for why you're doing it? It seems an excuse is only relevant if you're going to see that person again. And the assumption is here that you're not. So it is a bit of a strange passage. I would love for you to comment on our Facebook page what you make of these excuses and what they tell you about what the rabbis are thinking. Hint, hint. That's something to talk about. Then we have a very long passage about whether or not a non-Jew or a Samaritan can circumcise a Jew. Now, a word about who the Samaritans are and why the Talmud compares Samaritans with non-Jews. Samaritans were a group that separated from the mainstream, or at least at the time from the southern Jews, and formed a center of Judaism up with its center of worship on the Har Grizim, which is right near Shechem, which is modern Nablus. That's the Arab name for it. So Samaritans have historical ties with the Jews, and there are a lot of debates about their status in the Talmud. Sometimes they are considered to be Jews, and sometimes they're considered not to be Jews. With regard to this particular issue, Samaritans do seem to have circumcised. They seem to have practiced circumcision, but according to the Talmud, their kavanah, their intent is wrong, because they perform all of their mitzvot with the center in Har Grizim, Mount Grizim, in mind, as opposed to with Jerusalem or the temple in mind. So therefore, they may have the wrong intent when circumcising, where the non-Jew is simply not part of the covenant of circumcision, and really for him, it would just be a regular surgery. So there's an interesting discussion with various opinions about which of them can perform circumcision on a Jew. And then there's a fascinating passage about two different opinions among the Amoraim as to why non-Jews cannot circumcise Jews. And two different Amoraim give two different verses as to why. And then the Gemara asks a very typical question: what's the practical difference between these two views? And as test cases, they first use the case of the circumcised non-Jew, and we know that some other people in the world practice circumcision already in the Talmudic period, probably in the biblical period as well. And what about the case of the uncircumcised Jew? There are certain circumstances in which a Jew should not circumcise, namely if there are health risks. So is an uncircumcised Jew treated as if he's circumcised? And is a circumcised non-Jew treated as if he's not circumcised? The final discussion there is about a woman circumciser, and there is a dispute in the Talmud as to whether a woman can circumcise. I had an interesting discussion yesterday on Facebook trying to find out how many women circumcisers, mohalot, there are, and indeed there do seem to be a number of them operating in America. I would assume mostly in non-Orthodox circles, but I'm not 100% sure of that. And there are opinions among halachic authorities that women can indeed act as circumcisers, even though it's clearly not the norm. Finally, the sugya goes back to a Mishnah, which goes on the trend of things that non-Jews cannot do for Jews because we fear of murder. One of them is healing, act as a doctor. And the sugya ends with a very famous story about Rav Dama, Ben Dama, a rabbinic type figure who is bit by a snake and is about to die and wants to be healed by a Christian, and Rabbi Yishmael prohibits him from being healed by a Christian. The story has some interesting allusions to how the portrayal of Jesus or Jesus' students in the Talmud, and also to the fact that Jews, even rabbinic-minded Jews, may have been drawn to a certain extent towards Christianity or Christian figures during this period. So it is a very interesting daf. I hope you enjoy it. And as always, I would highly encourage you to engage in discussion on our Daf Shevui Facebook page. Our experience of learning Talmud is only enriched when we talk about it more with others, even if something makes you upset, something you don't understand, something you like. As long as we keep our discussion civil, I think it's all for the best.